Welcome to another episode of EY India Insights podcast. I'm your host Pallavi, and today we're joined by Anurag Gupta, leader of EY Partner India, to discuss how Indian CEOs are resetting strategy in an increasingly fragmented geopolitical landscape. From supply chain resilience and AI-led transformation to India's rising role in the global economy, we'll explore how business leaders are navigating uncertainty while building long-term growth strategies. Hi, Anurag. A very warm welcome to you, and thank you for joining our podcast today.
Hi, Pallavi. Thank you for having me.
So, Anurag, to begin with, in today's fragmented geopolitical environment, how are Indian CEOs balancing resilience, growth, and global expansion while staying agile enough to respond to constant disruption?
Well, I think clearly on multiple vectors, the business environment for Indian CEOs has evolved. It's no longer, as one would call it, very stable. Whether it's geopolitics, whether it's the advancement in technologies, whether it is some of the other aspects of trade, we are clearly seeing that we are operating in a very disruptive phase. I think one big change as a result Indian CEOs have brought in is the mindset of not wanting to wait for stability anymore. Because in the earlier era, there used to be cycles of stability and then a bit of, let's say, disruption. And CEOs would wait out the disruptive time, wait for stability to come. That's no longer the case. CEOs have realized they have to continue to deliver growth and returns to shareholders in the current disruptive times as well. So they've evolved their leadership and decision making frameworks or playbooks. They are now embedding geopolitical risk explicitly into their strategy and investment decisions. They're moving away from what we used to earlier have efficiency-led models to more resilience-led strategies which are designed for volatility. They're redesigning supply chains with diversification and buffers in mind. Capital deployment is becoming far more targeted. In the current environment, I would say success is increasingly measured in terms of sustainable business growth rather than the speed of expansion. CEOs are favoring nimble moves over large one-time bets. They prefer forming strategic alliances instead of pursuing large risky acquisitions. They're testing markets before scaling and deploying AI smartly and selectively to reduce downside risks, evolving their organizations and learning and preserving flexibility to evolution of trade and trade relationships and corridors. They are building in financial and operational buffers, stronger balance sheets, building redundancy in critical inputs, whether it's rare earth magnets, energy, semiconductors, logistics, etc. They're doubling down on India's structural advantage, which is both strong domestic consumption plus the demographic scale. Likewise, they're making very smart bets along the value chain and in sectors. When it comes to global expansion, the approach is far more calibrated, looking very selectively at markets where trade alliances are favorable, regulatory risk is manageable, there are cultural and business synergies that exist. So we've seen these Indian CEOs, sort of evolve their playbook. eh, Given the current fragmented geopolitical environment, they're not waiting and they're clearly evolving their playbook to still deliver growth and value in the current environment.
Thank you, Anurag. Now, India is increasingly being seen as a strategic global growth hub. So, how are business leaders leveraging this moment across supply chains, technology, and investment decisions?
Well, I think again across each of these three critical vectors of supply chain, capital allocation and technology, there's a lot that is working in India's favor. We've all heard about when it comes to supply chain, given the geopolitical reset, we heard about China plus one. I think that's now also moving towards when it comes to supply chain, India as a core node rather than just being a additional plus one de-risked supply chain country. So global companies are redesigning their supply chains. They are moving away from efficiency more towards resilience, and that's where India has become central to it. They are looking at India as a core node rather than only as an additional geography to supply for their global customers. So there is a lot of regionalization and localization of value chains that's happening, given the shift that we are seeing in supply chains. Leaders are no longer just offshoring, they're localizing value chains. They're setting up end-to-end manufacturing ecosystems, integrating India into regional trade corridors, depending on the trade arrangements that various regions and countries have. So clearly, we're seeing you know new supply chain opportunities emerging out of India, given some of these changes. Similarly, when it comes to technology, I think we are no longer just the back office. We're moving from back office to really becoming the innovation engine, leveraging technology. So there are a lot of global capability centers in India, which are just not outsourcing destinations, where they're supporting R&D, AI, and product engineering. We have a massive STEM talent pool and a growing startup ecosystem, which is really enabling the role of India in becoming an innovation engine through technology. We obviously have some very strong strategic advantages like the India stack, which is opening up great opportunities to scale digital businesses rapidly, build low-cost, high-volume platforms, really drive financial inclusion and customer reach. And AI, cloud, and digital ecosystem clearly is something that there's a lot of accelerated investment in India. We've seen massive investment numbers play out across cloud and AI infrastructure, data centers, digital services, automation, and Industry 4.0. Last, in terms of capital allocation, clearly the investment strategy is for India to be a core growth market. So it's no longer an emerging market allocation principle that applies to India, but it's a strategic growth pillar. We have a great combination of high growth, large domestic market, and policy stability. So that's really driving a lot of the investment strategy for global investors as well as corporates in India. A lot of policy-driven initiatives, whether it's PLI, whether it's liberalized FDI, trade agreements, which are really driving market access as well as reducing the risk and improving returns. So India is becoming hence a sort of a base for both domestic demand as well as exports. And companies are using India for domestic consumption as well as export for global markets, driven by many of the trade agreements as well as cost competitiveness that India offers. So clearly, I think we're seeing India is a very stable global growth hub amongst a lot of disruption that's happening globally. It offers great opportunity for business leaders to leverage India across many sectors as well as across supply chains, technology, and where to invest capital.
Thank you. With AI transforming industries at the same time, geopolitical uncertainty is rising. How are the CEOs deciding where to invest boldly versus where to stay cautious?
I mean, these are these are very unique times for CEOs. I mean, they've had to sort of do a very fine balancing between betting bold and at the same time staying cautious. Uh, there are some areas, some very clear areas where there is a long-term structural shift, and AI is one example. They're betting big. Many of the CEOs are betting big when it comes to long-term structural shifts, but they're very cautious trying to bet on any short-term cyclical bets. So there is a very smart, I would say, hedging that CEOs are doing, and there's a sort of a CEO decision playbook that's emerging, which is focusing on both investing boldly as well as staying cautious at the same time. They're looking to invest big if they can control. They can have high control, whether it's technology, data, talent. But if they have high dependency on external factors, they tend to be more cautious. When it comes to geopolitics, they're investing boldly in, if it's India, the Indian markets, and likewise other stable markets, and staying cautious and out of politically volatile regions. If it's technology, they're avoiding or being cautious with legacy technology, which is more disruption prone, and investing boldly in AI-led technologies. So we are clearly seeing a very smart hedging that CEOs are doing, where they are investing big and bold in supply chains, in AI, in some of the key stable large growth markets, in future facing sectors which are more long-term structural shifts like energy transition and so on and so forth. But at the same time, being cautious across areas like or projects which could be capital intensive with long paybacks, areas which are or sectors vulnerable to AI disruption, sectors which had over globalized operating models, or sectors and geographies which are geopolitically sensitive.
Thank you, Anurag. Now, before we let you go, one last question. Looking ahead, what capabilities will separate the companies that merely survive disruption versus from those that truly lead in the next decade?
That's a that's a very interesting question. I would say, clearly, companies that truly lead and not survive will differentiate themselves not by just one capability, but a complete system of capabilities or competencies that cut across technology, strategy, organization, as well as mindsets. Can companies really build an AI native operating model, not just look at adopting AI? What leaders do is really rebuild these AI native operating models, core processes around AI, rather than just leverage AI for a little bit of efficiency or productivity. Can companies that truly lead, will have dynamic strategy, continuous reconfiguration, as compared to those who are still relying on old static annual planning cycles, reacting slowly to external shocks. Resilience will have to be embedded by design, and companies that truly do that will lead as compared to others who will treat resilience just as a backup to sort of survive. Hyperlocalization with global scale. Again, strategically, companies that lead will be able to operate with region-specific strategies rather than one size fits all, and a mindset which is more being globally connected but locally optimized. Talent will undergo a lot of, I would say, evolution. Talent fluidity, the skill sets required, the collaboration between humans and AI is what leaders or leading companies will enable. They'll build a workforce that's continuously reskilled, comfortable with AI, organized around problems but not roles, and shift from hierarchies to a more fluid organization and project-based teams. The other thing that clearly companies that will lead will do is ecosystem orchestration. I think we spoke about that. Not try and have a top-down, vertically integrated value chain completely under one's control. It's very difficult to build these in today's day and age. You got to compete as part of networks and ecosystems and not alone. And, and that's something what leading companies in today's day and age will do. So value creation will move from individual firms to ecosystems, and leaders will orchestrate, not control that. So those are some clear, I would say, system of capabilities across technology, strategy, organization, mindsets that leading companies will demonstrate as compared to those who will merely survive these disruptive times.
Thank you, Anurag. Now, that brings us to the end of this episode of EY India Insights podcast. Thank you so much once again for joining us and sharing all your insights on how Indian CEOs can navigate geopolitical shifts, AI disruption, and the future of growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you.
Thank you. And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with EY India Insights podcast for more conversations shaping the future of business. Until next time, this is Pallavi signing off.